North of downtown Tucson, early work on a new interchange at I-10 and Ruthrauff Road unearthed signs of what life was like thousands of years ago. This summer, archaeologists began their dig just yards away from the Santa Cruz River. We got insight into what they may discover from University of Arizona anthropologist Thomas Sheridan. According to Sheridan, human activity along the Santa Cruz River in Tucson traces back 14,000 years, with the earliest evidence of maize agriculture dating back 4,100 years ago, and evidence of corn farmers turning to field irrigation at least 3,500 years ago.
Tucson is really important in the archaeological world, as far as the Southwest goes. And then the Hohokam people settled the Santa Cruz, later the Tohono O'odham, and then beginning in 1775, the military garrison or presidio of Tubac was moved up to Tucson, and that formed the nucleus of a Spanish and later a Mexican settlement, and that became Tucson. So, you have layers upon layers of culture and people that have settled here.
The Santa Cruz River, many of us will look at it today and see a dry riverbed, but way back during the time frame you're discussing, it was a rich irrigation for farmers, as you said. Still remnants of that today when archaeologists are exploring these regions?
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing about the Santa Cruz that people have to understand is up until 100 years ago, it wasn't this deep channel. All of that happened beginning in the 1880s when the riverbed incised downward and left many of the canals that diverted water high and dry. But prior to that, it was this wide floodplain where floodwaters would hit riparian vegetation, cottonwoods, willows, other shrubs. They'd slow down, they'd spread out, and they'd recharge the aquifer that fed these springs along the river. But the other thing that it's important to realize is that the Santa Cruz was not a river in the eastern sense of the term. Instead, it was an intermittent stream, which meant that when there was bedrock near the surface, water was forced to the surface and flowed along the surface. But there were long stretches of the Santa Cruz that never had any flowing water except during floods.
One of the terms in your book you mentioned desert farming. Can you help me understand what that means for people who we're not familiar with that term today, though some farmers are, but what was taking place along the river?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was very hard to do true dry farming in this region, because there's just not enough rainfalls. So you've got to provide some sort of extra water, to get your crops to maturity. And rivers like the Santa Cruz were a series of riparian oases. And that's a good way to think of them, as oases, where water bubbled to the surface and you could dig, put a brush diversion weir across that trickle of water, divert it into your earthen canal, or as the Spaniards called them, acequias, and then bring that water to your fields in these very simple gravity flow irrigation systems.
Right now, the development that has taken place along Interstate 10, the Santa Cruz River, what sorts of things can anthropologists like yourself take from these discoveries, these sites? What does it tell you about the past?
Well, one thing is that the overriding importance of water and the fact that wherever there was water in any quantity near the surface, people were living and have been living for a very long time. But unlike today, they had to engage in a natural give and take with the river because they couldn't build big dams. They didn't have deep groundwater wells that could lift water up from 600 or 800 feet below the surface.
As Arizona Public Media has reported, over the years, road construction along the Santa Cruz River has often led to these type of discoveries. Most recently in 2016, when crews unearthed a 3,000-year-old settlement while developing what is now Sunset Road and I-10.
One of the farmers that we've came across, his footprints come from over there, and where the mud plug is open, that it's called a weir, and the weir is open, that's watering. And then he walked over to this area and did something. The mud plug over there is shut. And then he walked across here and then walked back that way and went back to where he came from. It's amazing that you can see this person walking around doing this work 3,000 years ago. If that's not a time machine, I don't know what it is.
Sheridan explained that in other excavations, archaeologists found canals and other examples of early irrigation agriculture, along with stone tools and pottery belonging to the Hohokam, a tribe known for creating the largest irrigation systems in all of pre-Columbian North America in the Gila and Salt River valleys. Every excavation, though, tells us something new. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And when you think of it, we're living in a place that most people would not associate with agriculture, and yet it's been going on here for over 4,000 years. I think it also makes us reflect on what we've done to the Santa Cruz River, because basically we've turned it into a dry chute where runoff, instead of spreading slowly out and, replenishing the aquifers, just flows out and causes major flooding and drains away. The water tables just in 50 years between 1940 and the 1990s, when the Central Arizona Project arrived, water tables in city wells dropped by anywhere from 50 to 200 feet. And, in my history of Arizona, I said that Tucson water users were like trust fund babies plundering their inheritance, because it took millions of years to collect that water. And in that 50 years, we used, anywhere from 7 to 9% of it. Now that the balance has been restored to a certain extent with the arrival of the CAP water. But when you think that people were living and surviving and sustaining themselves along the Santa Cruz for thousands of years before we ever got here, it makes you think, what are our land use practices, and how long can we sustain a society of this size?
Okay. Professor Sheridan, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine.